Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and welcome back to my channel, Stubbornly Bookish. Today I'm going to be discussing all the books I read in November. I read 8 books in the month of November, which I thought was decently successful. I participated in Tome Topple and I think did really well for that readathon. And a lot of the books I read I think were real standouts, so I'm excited to talk about them. The first book technically carried over from October. I was nearly finished it, and that's The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is a middle grade book following a young boy named Bod who is actually raised by ghosts in a cemetery. As he starts to get older, he realizes that he isn't fully in the clear and some things from his past might be coming back to haunt him. I really love Neil Gaiman's writing. I think he has such a beautiful way of putting things. That has been consistent across all of the books that I've read by him. I think his writing is great. I did struggle a little bit with the plot though. I thought the beginning and end was strong, but the middle part kind of was a bit slow, and this book is fairly short. The audiobook was really fun. It was a full cast audio. I also really liked our main character Bod's character arc. It was you could see a very beginning, middle, end. He learns, he grows up, and I love where it left off. This is a fun story. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was a book that I have been intending on reading for a very long time, and that is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Anytime someone was ever discussing Vicious in a booktube video, I would kind of skip ahead because I didn't want to be spoiled or have any expectations, and I think I kind of set myself up for failure with that. For whatever reason, I always thought that this book was fantasy. It's not. It is sci-fi, and essentially it follows these 2 young men. There's 2 timelines, but the 2 men in the first timeline, they discover that they know how to give someone magical superpowers. And in the second timeline, one of our main characters is just getting out of prison and is intending to wreak havoc on the other main character. They hate each other, something has gone horribly wrong, and it's essentially a revenge tale. I liked this story, but I didn't love it like I was expecting to. I thought Vicious would probably be my favorite ever V.E. Schwab, and it just didn't pan out that way, unfortunately. I will say I really did love all of the characters. I love that we follow villainous characters. They aren't morally gray, whatever. These are bad people. They are villains. I thought there was great suspense and tension in this story. You could feel that there was this constant building to something that was going to happen, something major, and it really made the story fly very quickly. The individual scenes I found were a little too short, so overall I think the story felt a bit rushed. I don't love the original reason why our main characters were feuding. There's some weird fridging of some female characters that I was not a fan of. I enjoyed this, but I didn't love it. I ended up giving it 3.75 out of 5 stars, which is honestly kind of a shock to me. I did not expect that in the slightest. I read another V.E. Schwab story. I read Night of Knives. This is the Steel Prince Volume 2. I think a lot of my feelings of the first one also are reflected in my feelings of the second iteration in this story. I don't like the art style. I find it very difficult to follow, especially when there are major action scenes. I thought the plot was really fun. I always love a sort of tournament or event, and I thought the character development, it was a little predictable, but his arc was very clear and well done over such a short period of time, which I think is impressive. Yeah, they're okay. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book was honestly refreshing. I read it for Tome Topple. It was my first read of Tome Topple, and I really loved it, but no one's shocked. It's The Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I've been talking about this series nonstop recently. At a base level, I loved basically everything of this story. I thought the plot, character writing, and just the world was fantastically done. The plot was very interesting this time around. It's a lot more politically driven, and a lot more of it was slowly building to big events that happen at the end of this book, and I think also building towards the finale. I think all the character development in here was very interesting. Basically, it shirked all of my expectations. I was shocked throughout most of this book, and the climactic part was nuts in here, and I'm just sitting here reeling, dying for the next book, which comes out on June 30th. I plan on doing a full spoilery discussion on this story. I'm not sure if I'll be able to put it up before like all my end of the year videos go up, so this might be done in the new year, but I definitely plan on talking about this some more because I have so many thoughts. This series is phenomenal. So this next read was an entire like shock to me. There was a prompt in Tome Topple to pick up something that you don't normally read, and so I went with The Nightingale by Kristen Hannah. This is World War II historical fiction, which is something I normally don't tend to enjoy. It follows two sisters in France, Nazi-occupied France, and their individual fights to survive. This was beautifully written and very well narrated. I find some historical fiction that I have picked up in the past to be pretty dry and not very like emotive, but I thought this book was so very emotional. I think it did a good job exploring the complexities of war and how everything isn't black and white. I found the main characters to be very complex, and their dynamic and relationship was a great driving force. I did have a few complaints that like kind of stopped me from giving this a full 5-star. I didn't love both of the romantic subplots in here, and then I also kind of hated a reveal that happens near the end of the story. And talk about ugly crying. Boy, did I sob through the end of this book. I haven't cried through a book in a while, but this one had me just destroyed in tears. It was so emotional. I was so emotional. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was really good. The final book I read for Tome Topple was Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the sequel to the Illuminae Files, a book I read, I think, in 2016, so it's been a while since I picked up the sequel. But I had a lot of fun with this book. It always surprises me that a book that is told in such mixed media format manages to come across so clearly. So it's kind of a companion, but this also ties in very well to Illuminae. So don't worry if you've loved Illuminae and you're skeptical about this. I don't think that's something you should worry about. As much as I had fun with the story this time, there were a couple things with the plot that didn't quite work for me. There is a plot point in here that is surprisingly similar to Illuminae that I just thought was weird. I also wasn't the biggest fan of these two characters. Their chemistry, or whatever you want to call it, didn't quite work for me because it's told over such a short period of time that it just didn't seem feasible the way that they were feeling about each other. And I do think the pacing needed a bit of tweaking because this book from start to finish is just going at full speed. There's no time for break or a moment of rest. I liked the ending of this book. There were some crazy twists that went on in here, and I don't know if I entirely understand everything that went on, but that's okay. I just thought the twists and the ending and the way it tied into Illuminae was well done. It was pretty solid, so I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars, so I'm interested to see how I feel about the finale. The next book I read was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It's so incredibly popular. So many people love and identify with this story, and I was nervous because I felt like I kind of missed the hype train. I am glad to say that I loved essentially every element of this story, with one notable exception. I loved Evelyn as a main character. She was ruthless and determined to get her way. She wouldn't let someone tell her her worth. Like, she had a great understanding of the way the world worked, and she knew how to manipulate the system to get what she wanted, and frankly, I think that was admirable. Monique didn't feel like her own character to me. She definitely felt like she existed there to be, I guess, the mouthpiece for Evelyn, or to be the one receiving Evelyn's story. I didn't like the way that the story wrapped up and the way that things tied in together. I will also say, while I liked Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing, or the themes in her writing, I will say I think her writing is not very nuanced. Please don't come for me. She really likes to spell out exactly what she means, especially through her characters. There's a lot of pieces of Evelyn fully telling Monique what she should be thinking, and then Monique going, oh my god, I was so wrong, I should be thinking like this, and because of this, and blah blah blah. It just wasn't incredibly nuanced. I'm sorry. I just love how the story kind of bucked a lot of my expectations, and how this essentially was telling the story of her one great love, and how Evelyn Hugo was a bisexual woman, and I just loved it. And it like really, really hit me hard, emotionally speaking. It was twice in the span of a few books that I was literally sobbing over a story, and that doesn't happen often. I understand why this is some people's favorite book of all time. Trust me, I get it. I think this book was pretty freaking good. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. The final book I read in November was a book I've been highly anticipating for a while, and that's The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. This is set in the late 18th century France, sort of an alternate France, where magic is afoot, and there are a bunch of these secret houses / societies that contain all or a lot of the magical knowledge and prowess. Our main characters are actually attempting a heist for a myriad of reasons, but the biggest one being that one of our main characters wants his inheritance kind of restored and his reputation fixed to enact some revenge. That was a terrible synopsis, but the world in here is a little confusing, so summaries are also a little confusing. This is a book I fully plan on doing a review for, but this story has so much potential to be like a fantastic series. This was a solid entry into the world and as a first book in a series, but I'm so looking forward to what the rest of the series has to offer. I will be perfectly honest and say that the world building in here is kind of a little poorly done. It's not very clear as to what the magical things people can do are. Like anything with the magic, not great. The characters really, really make up for it in my opinion. The way they interact with one another, all of their motivations are super interesting, and I can't wait to see where their story goes in the future. I thought the plot was fun. I love heists. Heists are always an entertaining thing for me. And I think there are some really, really great and timely themes in this historical fantasy. I gave it 3.75 out of 5 stars. So that's it for all the books I read in November. If you have any thoughts on the books, any of the books that I mentioned, please let me know down in the comments below. And while you're there, let me know what your favorite read of November was. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you again very soon. Bye!